out and party like I did back in the day. So I'm California sober, as they say.
I'll pick it, Willie.
Hey folks, if you've missed out, in the last couple of months we've covered Billy Strings getting to play Tony Rice's guitar. We started Podcast with Marcel. I got to teach at Brian Sutton's Blue Ridge Guitar Camp. We made an awesome video about that.
Oh, this deck is friendly. Can I trick the deck into thinking I have food?
We covered the first Tony Rice Memorial Day Music Fest.
Hey folks, we're about to load up the car for the Tony Rice Memorial Festival, Tony Rice Memorial Day Festival, Tony Rice Memorial Day Tribute Festival.
And as artist in residence for IBMA 2023, I got to announce a massive online flat picking contest that was a collaboration between myself, IBMA World of Bluegrass, and Martin Guitars.
I'm standing in a field because of the
Martin Guitars and IBMA World of Bluegrass Guitar Contest. Oh, and my wife and I, had a kid. I guess that's important too. It has been an incredible year so far, and all of that is due to your support. I would not have had any of these opportunities without your support. So genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. The problem is, none of those videos that I just listed are lessons, and the channel is called Lessons with Marcel, which was maybe a goof now that I think about it. That's why today we're going to talk about playing bluegrass licks in the key of E, and the way we're going to do that is by learning Billy Strings' guitar breaks from the tune California Sober featuring Willie Nelson. In general, bluegrass guitarists prefer keys like G and C, while country guys prefer keys like E and A. There's a lot of different speculation as to where this divide came from, one possible theory being that country musicians played amplified gigs into sound systems, so vocalists could sing lower and still be heard and not strain their voices. Whereas bluegrass musicians played unamplified gigs or would share a microphone, meaning that a higher key might make a vocalist project more, make them more likely to be heard. Another theory is that the tuning of the other bluegrass instruments affected bluegrass guitar players. So for instance, a banjo is tuned to an open G chord. So if you're a guitar player and you want to play with a banjo player, maybe you play in the key of G and not E. The truth is probably a combination of different factors. But why would I bring this up? Because California Sober is recorded in the key of G, but Billy's capoed up to the 3rd fret, playing his breaks out of E shapes like a country guy when he could be playing an open G, like a bluegrass guy. No matter what kind of music Billy decides to make or where his career takes him, his chops come from the bluegrass world, and I think the majority of us would expect him to make the bluegrass choice. So I guess it's just like a sweet little Easter egg that while playing with a country legend, Billy decides to make the country choice. The thing is, Billy's not really a country player, so what we get is not country guitar playing. Instead, we get a really solid approach for how to play bluegrass lines out of the uncommon shape of E. But before we break everything down, this video is sponsored by the Lessons with Marcel workshop program. All of the LWM teachers host Saturday Zoom workshops on all kinds of bluegrass topics. My next workshop is September 16th on playing up the neck. Be sure to check the link in the description to browse all of the upcoming workshops and get signed up. Let's make sure we have some basic fretboard knowledge first, so I want to talk about several pentatonic boxes, a specific arpeggio, and then 2 bluegrass techniques, drones and cross-picking. The first pentatonic box is pretty obvious. The G major pentatonic scale that we often use in bluegrass is the relative major of the E minor pentatonic scale. So by playing an E minor pentatonic scale over an E major chord, we can get a blues sound. Look out for some of the other notes that could be added to this scale. For instance, the flat 5. This will commit to the blues sound. Or the major 3rd from the E chord to make the scale feel slightly more diatonic. There's a lot of notes you can add, and yes, Billy does play with that later. The next 2 pentatonic boxes are in E major, specifically box 4 and box 5. You can see box 4 fits over a C shape and box 5 fits over an A shape. Willie uses a lot of the dirty third in these boxes, so take a second to map out where that flat 3 is. Next is the arpeggio. Whenever the 4 chord comes up, Billy plays this A7 arpeggio. That's 2 octaves of A7 chord tones. Billy never uses the whole thing at once, but he does end up using all of it. You'll see. Also, you know what? I'm going off script. I'm going to throw something else in here. Over the 5 chord, Billy plays a diagonal pentatonic shape, and it sounds like this. Alright, the last 2 things are cross-picking and drones. Drones are really simple. In this case, we're just talking about playing the same note on 2 different strings, like this. Cross-picking is a rhythmic arpeggio, generally built of groups of 3 notes to mimic the 3-finger roll of bluegrass banjo. Billy plays an example like this. Okay, now that we've talked about all of that, but you haven't seen the full transcription of the breaks, do me a favor, don't skip this. This is important. Listen to the break again and try to hear all of the stuff I just talked about. So you're looking for different pentatonic boxes. You're looking for an A7 arpeggio. You're looking for drones. You're looking for cross-picking. This is important because if you can recognize all of those different features, you won't need me when you want to learn your next complicated break. You can just hear it yourself. Give it a shot.
I can't stay out and party like I did back in the day, so I'm California sober, as they say. I'll pick it, Willie.
This tab is available at lessonswithmarcel.com. There's an optional donation, but if you want it for free, you can just type in $0, 0 cents. No need to feel guilty. My strings are dead. Please ignore that. Alright, so starting at the very top, the first lick here, the first 3 measures, let's say, probably the most country thing in here. Starting with the pickup and then playing 3 measures, it sounds like this. I think some people would listen to that and think that's not a very Billy thing to do. We don't see a ton of Billy breaks that start quite like that. And one example is in a live version of Love and Regret that we tabbed out a long time ago. There's the Love and Regret lick. And then if I go back to California Sober, this is the lick. What's happening here is that he's using a very similar kickoff, and the kickoff moves from box 4, the major pentatonic. There's box 4, the E major pentatonic that we practiced earlier, and it moves into box 5 of the E major pentatonic. So obviously this is a move that Billy enjoys in some way because we have at least 2 examples of him doing it. If you want to play this lick, you should also notice the blue notes that come up in this thing, right? It'll allow you to make more licks like this if you enjoy this sound. We actually start on a blue note. We start on the minor third and we go to the major third. That relationship when you go from minor third to major third, I like to call the dirty third. You hear it a lot in improvisational music. So dirty third. This bend, we're bending up to like an E7 sound. It sounds like I can't get that bend in tune, and that would be an accurate assessment. After that, we get another dirty third moment. This repeater, that is just the dirty third, then the 5th of the chord. You can always find that lick by finding the chord that you're playing over as an A-shaped bar chord. For instance, if I was playing over a B chord, I know that that lick is going to sit right there. If I was playing over a C chord, He does another kind of country move right here. So when he comes back down, he returns to his E root. So playing the lick again. We end up back here. We end up on this E note. This is at the very end of the third measure. Now if you keep reading to the last measure in this line, he slides it down, that same double stop shape. Billy loves double stops. But what he's doing here is he's making an E7 chord. He's making that E7 sound because we're about to go to an A. And that's good voice leading. E, E7, A, right? So the line... makes you want to resolve to the A chord, which is a very country thing to do. It's a smart line. If you want to steal that move, that's the move. Right? You can make it feel like, I'm going to the 4 chord. Now we practiced that arpeggio earlier. Something like that. If you look at this next line, when we finally get that 4 chord, we get that A chord, you can see that he's making his line out of that arpeggio. In fact, this line splits up really nicely. The first half is kind of built on the A7 arpeggio, and then after that we're doing cross picking over the E chord. A couple things to look out for is the pick strokes. When the pick strokes get weird, maybe even more importantly, is when Billy actually changes chord. If we look at this first measure of A chord, by the end of it, he's already switching to an E sound, even though the E chord hasn't actually come up yet. The band's still playing an A chord, right? This all is A. And then this sound, that is the dirty third for E. Remember, we learned it there. Of course, he does it even later too, right? He reinforces it in the last measure of this line by playing it down here. When you're doing the cross picking, I would recommend that you try to do this the modern way. That is to say that you alternate all of your pick strokes. So starting on the first group of 3 in this cross picking, I have 4 open 3. If I just play that segment right there, you can see all of my pick strokes alternate. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. You want to keep that pattern going. The old school way is to do down, down, up. And I love it. I actually do it all the time. But for a modern situation, and this is a modern application of cross picking, I would probably cross pick with the modern pick strokes. Anyway, the last measure, I have to break that pick stroke because of these hammer-ons. Down, down, down. Up, down, up. There's your first 2 lines. Let's look at the next line of this break. So we're playing over that A chord again, that 4 chord, and what do you think's going to happen? The arpeggio is going to happen. Here we go. Really like this line. Took me a while to get it. I imagine that it's going to take other people a while to get it. So this pull off here, it happens really quickly. You want all of this to feel like 8th notes. So if I'm counting it, I would think 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and this is going to be just one of those moments in time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Anyway, then we get this descending lick right here. This is really similar to like classic Billy tags, these kind of tags. The difference is that he's including the dirty third for the E chord on top of it, right? We're still using the same scale, G major pentatonic or E minor pentatonic, but now he's using the dirty thirds for relative to E, and he's also ending everything on an E note. So he can keep using all of his like G knowledge. Now we get this diagonal pentatonic, one of my favorite parts of this thing. So he's starting this a little bit lower than we did in the example. We started right on the B root note. Also, you notice we're playing over an F sharp 7 chord, and he's just thinking about the B7 chord that's about to happen, right? Even though we have a 2-5 chord change, Billy's only thinking about 5. He does start down here on an F sharp, but it's still just part of this diagonal B7 pentatonic. Anyway, really clever line. The first 2 measures are that diagonal pentatonic. It's a classic country move too. I highly recommend practicing that one. You want that in your playing. It's kind of harder to play Billy's lick. Billy's lick is really nice in this context, but just that diagonal scale that I showed you in the earlier examples might be easier for you to create your own things with. All right, last two measures give us another classic kind of Billy tag phrase, one of these. Right, that kind of thing. But he's adding in, he's trying to get 3 notes on almost every single string. He's eating up a lot of time, so he's got this long descending line. Sounds like this. You can go through every single one of those notes and you can justify it against the key as either being diatonic or from the E minor blues scale or E minor pentatonic. But it's kind of not worth it to spend all that time. You just kind of accept it as something that sounds cool. Let's see if I can play that whole first break at a reasonable tempo. 1, 2, 3. All right, so the second break, it feels like a much younger Billy Strings. This is like stuff he used to play. So he starts this break with the drone thing. Right? We see this actually in the same key, same example in Lost John. I think it's a Carter Vintage video. Anyway, so we got that same intro. And then we get these interesting little double stops, right? This same lick happens in the R vinyl version of Dust in a Baggie. It's the black and white video. I have an entire lesson on how to play his break in that one, but he plays the exact same double stop lick. I think down to that timing, I think that's what it is. So on and so forth, right? But it's that same lick, right? In this case, we're in E. So then coming down, we're going to get this sort of Foggy Mountain breakdown repeating lick. So Foggy Mountain breakdown, famous little bluegrass snippet, and basically you take the chord that you're playing over and you keep playing the 5th and a half step below the 5th. This is an example in the key of G. It's not only used in that song, it's a very classic bluegrass sound, but Billy's about to use it. I think that's a good, like, kind of cultural touchstone for you to understand what that sound is. So looking at the end of this line, I get this. And that's what's happening right there. These two open strings are from the E chord. That happens to be a drone, but also it is the flat 5 of the E chord. So Billy repeats this over and over again in kind of different patterns. It's not super important that you get this exact. I think what's more interesting is that he gets away with repeating this thing, and then he plays it over the A chord too, and even though it has nothing to do with the A chord. So playing the first line into the second line, you can hear some of that. I think I counted that right. I might have counted that wrong, but that's okay. You can hear that that's very interesting how that works, right? And also our ending lick right there too, moving forward, this. That's very minor pentatonic, right? The scale we've been talking about. But right before it happens, he does this. There's that dirty third relative to E. Helps a lot, right? So looking forward, we get that A7 arpeggio again. It sounds like this. So So of course, over that E chord, he's got to walk up to that C sharp minor. That's not exactly our arpeggio, but this first boogie woogie sound is our arpeggio. Sure, we're playing that G note on 5th fret instead of the open G, but same idea. So think about all the different ways you can use arpeggios. It's kind of an interesting thing, just as useful as a scale, though I feel like a lot of people who are interested in bluegrass don't think about him that way. But Billy has shown twice that he could create an interesting line with an arpeggio. Moving on to the very last line. It's another classic Billy tag. I don't even feel like I need to explain this one to you. I think it intuitively probably makes sense to you since you've seen the others. Let me see if I can play this whole second break for you. That's the second break. Okay, if you want to just steal these licks and put them in other songs and have fun with them, get creative, you got everything you need. Go crazy. But if you want to play the Billy Strings breaks, it's going to take a couple reps. It took me a couple reps to get it up to speed. So go ahead, do me a favor, hit that settings wheel, change the playback speed to something more reasonable, and let's hit this thing.
California solar, as they say.
Thanks for hanging out. I hope you got something out of this lesson. Maybe you have some new ways to think about playing bluegrass out of E shapes. Another big thank you to all of you great people for your support, and a congratulations to Billy for getting to do a song with Willie. Don't forget to check out lessonswithmarcel.com to get this tab and maybe sign up for a workshop like my upcoming one on September 16th. Anyway, you all have a good one. I'll see you later.